I'm joined by 2013 All-Ireland winner and goalscorer Darach Honan to, well, I suppose broadly talk about Clare, but we'll touch on everything else. Darach, first of all, the only one man to talk about it, that's Tony Kelly. Are you in any way, shape or form surprised by the way he's playing at the moment? 145 from 3 games, but more crucially, against the Leinster champion of last year and the double back-to-back Munster champion. It's not like he's just doing it on the handy days, and even against 14 men, or when you're down to 14 men against Laois, he's just been incredible.
Yeah, I say first of all, Shane, it's great to talk to you after a Clare victory. That's the best time to get you, I think. Yeah, I mean, Tony has been just outrageously good like this season, and it's an absolute joy to watch him. I'm surprised at the level he's playing at, because it's been so consistent game after game. Like, I mean, I've always known how good he was, but to be able to do this 3 games in a row so far, and hopefully to continue, is kind of unprecedented. It may be the best season anyone has ever had if he was to continue playing like that for the remaining games.
Yeah. Does it actually make you dream, like, how long can he keep this going for, and how far can we get with just one man? Obviously he's not the only man playing well, but without him shooting the lights out, do you actually think he can stay going? Like, how big dare you dream?
Yeah, I mean, I do think he can continue doing it, because he's so hard to mark. Like, people talk about, you know, you should have different systems to mark and whatever, but the only solution I see is to double mark him. If you wanted to stop him, and you saw that as the first thing that you were to achieve, you know, going out against Clare. But because he reads the game so well, he has that first step mentally to get away from his man. And then he's also incredibly pacey. So he's got the first step in the head, and then he's also, once he's gone, there's no catching. So, like, he's feeding off the lads really well. He knows when to make the runs. He knows, you see, when Shane is getting towards the ball, he knows more than likely Shane will win it and will find him. And he knows the players to make the runs off. So it's very, very hard to stop him. If his shooting accuracy continues, that's the thing. He will continue to play that well.
And did you look at the way Davy Fitz sent up against him and said, I'll put a bigger man like Matt O'Hanlon on him, and think this won't really work? Now, just even to jump back to the 2017 Club All-Ireland, we alternated 2 guys on him. So it was man marking, but it was guy alternating, both pretty quick and able to stay going. And Matt O'Hanlon's a great player and all that, but it just seemed like the wrong matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose Fitzy did get that totally wrong, like, to be fair. Matt Hannon, like you said, is a very solid player. He's a good player, but he wouldn't be matched up well with Tony, because Tony's pace, and Matt is probably maybe struggling for pace a small bit. But like, I suppose the day you highlighted there in the 2017 final, that was like one of the more successful tactics, I would say, in a team lining out against Tony Kelly, where I actually can't remember his name now, but the lad you had marking was very physically fit and fast, and was able to keep him and stop the run. And I seen it in Clare, where in the Boyce in the county final did a really good job, and now Tony did actually still finish very strongly, and Ballier won the game. But what Boyce did was he checked his run initially. When Tony was starting to make the run, that's when he stopped him. And that seems to be, you know, what you have to do. But hopefully the lads in Waterford won't do that.
So are you happy to hand him out the Player of the Year award now, or is it a bit too early?
Shane, I'm extremely happy to hand it out to him, because I backed him at 50-1 last week.
Yes, that was,
so if you were voting that, do me a favour.
Yeah. So how impressed were you with Clare's 127-17 point win over Wexford? And I'd say it was very sweet for Brian Lohan against Davy Fitz.
Yeah, it was a very impressive performance. Clare got a lot of flack last week, probably from yourself included, after the point victory over Laois. And I actually felt that was a good victory. Like, Laois are getting praise for coming on over the last few years, and Clare were down a man, you know, for the vast majority of the game, and they shipped 3 goals without scoring any, and they still came out with a victory. So I watched it and I thought, that's a really good result. Great to get the victory. And obviously there's things to improve on, but it was a good way to be coming into the Wexford game then.
Yeah.
So I wasn't surprised at all by the victory. I suppose you have to add into that then the fact that Wexford have slipped an awful lot, and they're playing very poor.
Yeah. Any thoughts on why Wexford have gone backwards? They looked pretty good last year, and if they managed the game against Tip better, they would have been in All-Ireland final. Yeah,
they looked good last year. I suppose everything went right for them last year, down to even the qualification for the Leinster final, where, you know, the ref maybe missed a free at the time, and they were lucky to get through to the Leinster final when there was a few teams on level points. So then, of course, they did have a great victory in that Leinster final against Kilkenny. But the day against Tip, I thought that was a game that they should have won. Tip again had a man sent off, and they got all the breaks and they couldn't get over the line. Now this year the breaks aren't going their way, and you have injuries to key players like Lee Chin and stuff like that, and that's obviously hurt them. But I think the biggest thing with Wexford is how predictable they've come with their with the tactics that they employ, and it's very easy to prepare to play against them. Part of the reason I was so confident going into that game as well was because Clare have consistently beaten Wexford over the last number of years, be it league and championship, and at no great strain either. That they've just been able to pick apart the system very easily.
If we can move away from Tony Kelly for a second, are there any other players that have really stepped up and impressed you? And this is in take into consideration David McInerney was suspended.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tony is having a sensational season, but I don't see it as a one-man team at all. He's taking the frees as well, which someone else is winning the free, he's come over taking and scoring it, which obviously needs to be done. But the free being one is the play there really. In terms of players that have impressed me, I would say a newcomer that's really impressed me there is Rory Hayes at cornerback. He's bringing a huge amount of energy to it, physicality, and he's tigerish in terms of his aggression. So he's a great addition. Hopefully he can keep that going. I'd say one thing that he'd look to improve on maybe will be his distribution, but I think as he gets more comfortable in the role, that'll come on. And then in terms of other players, I think people have highlighted Shane and how effective he has been in winning the ball and setting up the scores and winning frees. So those are two I think that stand out to me.
Yeah, do you see David McInerney going back to midfield? Or I mean, Jason McCarthy looked like he went in midfield to me. It can be hard to tell at times on TV. Would you put David McInerney in the backs and leave Jason McCarthy out in the middle?
Personally, I've kind of always wanted to see David McInerney centre back for the last few years, or in the half back line at least, centre back or wing back, and that's personally where I play him now. I don't think Brian's going to do that, but that's what I would do. I think the last day, Waterford and Limerick, the puckouts, Stephen Keefe was going along, the majority of the time with the puckouts. And I think you need a really physical half back line that will be able to dominate those puckouts when they do come down. I think that Dave McInerney would be able to do that, and that's where I'd line him out anyway.
And you mentioned Davy Fitzgerald. He played in the half forward line for the most part the last day. Where would you like to see him play? To my mind, Brian Lohan probably feels like he needs a big man up in the forward line to supplement the smaller, faster guys. So, on balance, where would you put him?
Yeah, David is another player. He was probably disappointed in the first day out against Limerick, where he didn't really get into the game. But I was delighted for him the last day because I thought he did some really good things at crucial times where he won ball and he carried ball into the wind and scored some great points. Dave Fitzgerald, I think, is excellent at carrying the ball and breaking the line. That's what I see as his strongest asset. And for that reason, I'd have him in the half forward line, centre forward probably, because if he can do that from that position, you're creating goals and you're creating scores. He plays a lot of hurling at wing back as well, and he's very good there. But he tends to put the ball in the hurley as a first instinct when he gets it, and I'd rather see a half forward doing that than a half back.
And some people will criticise Shane O'Donnell being further away from goal, but my guess is that Brian Lohan wants to have Ryan Taylor inside. He fancies having him inside, and maybe thinks Shane O'Donnell can do more on the outside, and doesn't feel he could have both of them in there. Is that how you read it?
Yeah, well, hopefully you'll have Shanahan returning now next day, and he might be inside. So yeah, I think Shane has been very effective when he's been brought out the field. He's a good foil for. Yeah, so I was saying there you might put Fitzgerald centre forward, but you could put Fitzgerald wing forward and Shane O'Donnell centre forward, or Shane on the wing, whichever. I think he's doing really well to win the ball. He's setting up play and he's drawing a foul. A lot of the time when he wins it, and for the Tony's in a foul is as good as a point. He might be putting it over the bar himself, but essentially he's winning that score. I do think that it would be nice to have a scoring threat from him, and it's something that if he could bring that into his game, he'd really elevate the way he's playing. But having said that, he's playing very well without doing it at the moment.
Yeah. Do you get the sense that the rest of the country is just waiting for Clare to run out of the road, though? Because, your club mates, John Conlon, and Colin Galvin and Ian Galvin aren't there. And also, Podge Collins went over to the footballers, and there's one other name, Peter Duggan as well, isn't there? Do you get that sense that the rest of us are waiting for you to hit the wall?
Yeah, I mean, if you'd watched any of your analysis, you definitely think that. So yeah, I think I mean, people probably are underestimating, but like all those players you mentioned there are really good players, and they're naturally going to be big losses. But I suppose it's a credit really to Brian and the management that they're coping without them, and to the players as well, like that they're coping without them at the moment, and the guys that are getting their chances are playing well. Like you mentioned, Ryan Taylor there. If all of those were available, would he be playing? Maybe not, but he's playing really well now that he's in there, and he's contributing very well in every game. So it's an opportunity for the guys to stand up that those guys are out missing, and then to a man really they have been.
Yeah, and I think probably not too many people would back Clare against beating Watford this weekend, because Watford, it's going to be tough to turn around after putting so much into the Munster final, losing 25 points to 21 to Limerick. It will be hard to turn it around, whereas Clare are coming in off the back of a good win, 2 good wins.
Yeah, it's always nice to be coming in off the back with a bit of momentum and off a win. And even though Waterford competed really, really well with Limerick, just sometimes that loss will take an awful lot out of you. Where if you'd gotten over the line by a point in the same game, you'd feel great. So hopefully it will have taken an awful lot out of them, and that they will be, dipped a small bit. But I think Liam Call's he's doing an excellent job down there. And like we mentioned a few names there that Clare are missing, and obviously Waterford are down like the 2 Mannies who would have been key players over the last few years. So they're not without their troubles either, but he's doing an excellent job to find replacements, and they played a really good style against Limerick, and we're very impressive, I thought.
Do you have any particular memories of playing against Watford over the years that stand out to you?
I think I made my debut against Waterford actually. And actually I think we lost that game. Dave Fitzgerald was over at the time. The memory of the game I had was Ken McGrath came on that time, and he obviously felt like he should have been starting, but I remember he scored a point there under the stand, and he was roaring and bawling over the sideline, telling them all about it, that he should have been on from the start.
Really? Yeah.
So that I made a debut against them, and then in more recent times we won the league. Obviously in 2016 we played them in the league final. And then we played them in the first round championship a couple of weeks later. So we won the league final and lost the championship. But
that was the league final that Tony Kelly was so influential at the end of, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I would have said it was the one that I was so influential in. No. Yeah, Tony got a couple of great scores at the end of the game, and I remember actually himself and Keane were joint captains at the time. So Keane's speech said, Keane started the speech and said, I'll hand it over to Tony now to finish it off, just like he does in all the games.
Very nice. And is there anything that you're particularly worried about from what Watford might present to Clare this weekend?
I think looking at Waterford the last day, what they tend to do really, really well is they run the line, say tight work, Kevin Moore and Callum Lyons, they tend to be able to break the line there at half back and create an overlap. And if they weren't breaking the tackle, they were drawing the foul, because Limerick were coming in, with the arms up trying to stop them, and they were either getting past or they were able to draw a foul. And I thought that was the launch pad for most of what they did well. If they were creating overlap, then Barron and those were there available to start the attack. I think if you're Clare, you have to address that. It's not crucial that you dispossess them in the tackle, but it's crucial that you don't let them pass you to create the overlap. That's the way I'd see it, and it's also crucial that you don't foul them. So I think that'll be one thing that I'd be looking at. You can't allow Tidy Work to have the same influence over the game that he did v Limerick.
And so do you, if a sweeper is that influential, do you actually mark him and try and force someone else to be the sweeper?
I think you have to be clever in how you use the ball. I wouldn't necessarily mark him. No, I wouldn't do it like that. I think you can take him out of the game if they're dropping, but they don't really drop a sweeper, as in they still play their 6 forwards, don't they?
Give or take, but I mean, there's probably 2 inside, and then everyone fairly withdrawn.
Yeah, I think they're sitting in midfield or on the centre forward, and Tig is sitting back, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's the same style of sweeper that say Wexford play, where there's a nominated forward is going back to play as a 7th defender. So I think like if they are dropping Tig back like that, and you have to rely on your backs to be able to, if they have an extra man back there, you have an extra man, in your backs. And if you have an extra man, you can't just lump all up. You have to be able to use the ball correctly and not be putting your forwards under unnecessary pressure. Get in good delivery, and if you use the ball correctly in those instances, you can take them out of the game.
How much or how well would you know Brian Lohan, and would you have had many interactions with him in a hurling sense?
He was over to Fitzgibbon in UL for the 1 year that I did there in the Masters, and then he's in the same business as myself. We're both in financial services, so I'd meet him at different gigs throughout the year, although not this year with COVID. So I'd know him, relatively well. I had a big time for him. Obviously, as a player, he would have been a hero growing up, so he would have been an idol that way. And then, I've always found him to be good to deal with, gent to deal with in terms of. I found him to be a good manager at UL, and I found him, he's a good head in him.
Yeah. And so this weekend, are you going to call the game? Are you going to go with Clare?
I think they probably will, yeah. I'd say I'll go with Clare. I think that that momentum that they've had over the last 2 weeks will be influential in terms of them coming in on high and Waterford coming in after a disappointing loss. And I think that they're finding their feet. The more games they're played, they're improving week on week. And with the form that Tony's in, I think that actually this weekend I do see one of the other forwards putting up a big score or making a name for themselves, as well as just Tony, who has been doing it previously. So I'd go for Clare if I was pushed.
And the way Austin Gleeson is playing, he scored 3 points but was taken off and probably wasn't overly influential. Do you see him being a big danger this weekend the way he went last weekend?
Yeah, I thought he took his score as well. His striking is so good that he can do that. I like the fact that Cahal's given him a defined role, and he's been, he's given a responsibility there that he's to win a position and do that well. Didn't go so well for him the last day. It was probably something there when Watford were raining puck-ups down on the Limerick half back line in the second half. It was that's where you probably were hoping, from a Waterford point of view, that Austin would have been able to win a few puck-outs at that stage, but it didn't work out this day. I'm sure he could have a bigger game this weekend, and it's something that Clare will have to look out for there as well.
Yeah. Who do you see as favourites for the All-Ireland? It's hard to look past Limerick, isn't it?
It's just very hard to look past Limerick. They're the standard bearers at the moment. They haven't even hit their best performance yet, and they beat us by 9 or 10 EG by 9 or 10, and then New Waterford by 5 or 6 or something like that. And they haven't reached. I don't think they've reached their pinnacle yet this year. So I think Galway would have a good chance against them if they were to reach the semi-final. I don't see anyone else coming that close to them, unfortunately.
So, I thought you were going to say Clare were going to win the All-Ireland.
Well, you see, Clare will beat Galway then, Shane, in the final.
Right, okay. Yeah, that sounds all right. You've it nicely worked out. Do you see, who do you see coming? So that suggests you see Galway beating Tipperary this weekend.
I do, yeah. I think that Tip, when I saw the team that they picked for Limerick, I thought, Jesus, this is a serious team, but they just haven't reached their potential. Maybe it's off the back of when the last year they've struggled, following seasons historically, and it might be a case of that. But I think the Galway are in a better position at the moment. I think they've played better hurling so far, and I probably fancy them right.
Yeah, can't say I agree with you on that one, although you're probably not surprised to hear that. Okay, Darach Honan, really appreciate you joining me.
Sounds.